Okay, so if I asked you to picture in your head a classic Disney movie, what sort of elements would most people picture? Probably some sort of princess, right? And perhaps some sort of hero or adventurer to go along with them. You'd probably imagine some sort of fun animal sidekick, and then, well, there's gotta be a villain, with an iconic villain song if we're lucky. I mean, really, in general, the whole soundtrack should be pretty iconic, because most of Disney's all-time best movies are musicals with timeless soundtracks. But then you take all these elements and wrap them in an adventure about discovering who you are or finding out where you belong, and you've got a classic, timeless Disney story that can be enjoyed by all ages. And, well, all of these elements also just happen to apply to Moana, which kind of took the Disney formula and reinvented it in a lot of ways, winding up feeling fresh and new, while also feeling reminiscent of classic Disney Renaissance films in a number of ways. This movie dropped in 2016, had a huge cultural impact to the point that in 2024, it held the title for most streamed movie of all time for 5 years straight. 8 years after its release, it was still streaming's biggest hit. Let that sink in. Yet Disney somehow made no effort to replicate the quality of this movie, and instead decided to follow it up with some of Disney Animation's worst films of all time. To put it in perspective, Ralph Breaks the Internet is the movie they released directly after this one, okay?
Do people assume all your problems got solved because a big strong man showed up?
But I want to take a genuine look back at this movie because it's now been 10 years since it was released. And in my head, it still exists as a timeless classic. Not only full of great characters and music, but also great animation, which was an impressive technical achievement for its time. But let's see if it all still holds up. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive here, taking a look at the movie itself, as well as some of the behind the scenes and deleted scenes, which I feel can be incredibly relevant to how this movie wound up as what it is. And while there's no ignoring the fact that the awful looking live action remake is just around the corner, I have no interest in talking about that. These types of stories are carefully crafted by talented teams of storytellers who bring a creative vision to life through the art of animation, a medium they intentionally chose because the world they visualized only really works as an animated film. The live action remakes just come along and strip away all of the magic and color and visual storytelling that was built into the animated form. Yet people still watch them for whatever reason, and they're gonna make $1 billion anyway, so whatever. I don't want to talk about that shit. I'd much rather talk about the film that I love, the classic Moana, the one with the creative vision behind it that people are actually going to remember and rewatch.
Pretty good, this character of Maui. He was sort of a superhero demigod. That seemed like a great character to do an animation that would be more fun than live action. So, great character to do an animation that would be more fun than live action.
The hierarchy of power in the Moana is about to change.
So, if you're wondering why this movie feels kinda like a true Renaissance Disney movie, it's because it was directed by the guys that did some of those classic movies. Directors John Musker and Ron Clements previously directed Princess and the Frog, Treasure Planet, Hercules, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, and The Great Mouse Detective. And you can honestly kind of see how elements of their experience working on those past films came together to define this one. Right from the opening, you can tell how well crafted this film really is. The first little narration segment we get from Grandma Tala sets up everything quite nicely, but we also get this stylized animation heavily inspired by Polynesian art. It's really pretty, and easily introduces us to the world and culture presented in this film. And it actually also sets up some of the threats we'll be seeing later in the film, such as Tamatoa or the Kakamora. It's really clever planting the seeds for these bad guys in this way, because when they show up, they have already been subtly established in our minds without us even knowing it, which I like. Then we get the setup for Taka, our final boss of the film, which I must admit is fairly obvious looking back that this is actually Te Fiti because it shows up the second the heart is stolen. I'm not sure if many people found this to be an obvious reveal upon their first viewing, but back when I saw it in theaters, I didn't see it coming until just before the reveal, so it's not that big of a deal. I still think it's a very good idea to show Maui steal the heart and reveal Taka, because this sets us up for the reveal as to why Maui actually stole the heart. And it clearly sets up the Te Fiti Te Ka reveal, which still works quite well. They don't try to pull an unexpected twist out of nowhere, it's properly set up and can be predicted. But you honestly should be able to predict the twist if the clues are properly laid out. Many villain twists just don't have it laid out well and just kinda come out of nowhere. But this is well set up. After Maui steals the heart, we actually see the entire island behind him is left in a thick, dark cloud of ash. Not dissimilar to the dark cloud Te Ka arrives in. So one could reasonably identify some form of correlation between the two, and I honestly like that. I enjoy being rewarded for paying attention. Now, Moana's story opens with a big ensemble number where we learn about the village and their culture. The song Where You Are features a sort of time lapse that takes Moana from a little baby into her current age of 16, which, quick sidebar, yeah, 16 is too young to go out sailing the open ocean. Sure, Moana's father was being a coward who wouldn't allow anyone to sail beyond the reef, but he witnessed a number of grown men, including his best friend, die in a storm on the ocean, so I totally understand his reasoning for keeping his 16-year-old daughter from sailing out to certain death. Okay, thanks. Anyway, Here We Are is an incredible ensemble number full of great choreography and some creative transitions from sequence to sequence, which make it all flow really, really nicely. It constantly communicates Moana's desire to get back to the ocean while communicating how her father consistently thwarts that desire. Then it slows down to show Moana's unique relationship with her grandma Tala, who encourages Moana to listen to her inner voice, the voice which calls her out to the sea. I unfortunately can't really play any of the music because I will otherwise be quickly demonetized, and YouTube basically has no sympathy for smaller channels when it comes to copyright claims, so I gotta be really careful here, unfortunately. Not trying to destroy my YouTube career before it starts. Sorry.
Moana.
Anyway, this is such a strong opening number that says so much in under 4 minutes. And that's the thing with this movie. Each song communicates a ton of information to the audience, both through the lyrics and visuals, while also being incredibly fun and catchy to just listen to on their own. But, I mean, yeah, of course it is. Lin-Manuel Miranda did the soundtrack here, which is an absolutely perfect fit, as he comes from a theater background and clearly has no problem writing musicals.
It is set in the Pacific Islands. What does that world sound like? So we drew upon that culture and that rich musical culture of that part of the world.
But Disney absolutely should have locked him down after he put out this banger soundtrack. He wound up doing the music for Encanto, which was also phenomenal, but for Wish, they hired a couple of pop songwriters with no musical theater experience, and then they never even offered him the opportunity to come work on Moana 2. What? I'm not gonna say this movie owes all of its success to Lin-Manuel Miranda's music, but it definitely helped. So not even attempting to hire him back is really weird to me, especially because that soundtrack was desperately trying to replicate what this movie did without any of the creative lyricism. If you want the music to be like Moana 1, just rehire the guy who did the soundtrack for Moana 1. It's not that hard. Now, this film, and especially the intro scenes on the island of Motunui, draws heavy inspiration from Polynesian culture. The directors actually traveled for weeks to not only get some of the visual elements correct, like the tattoos or the architecture, but they went looking for major themes in Polynesian culture that they could then bake into the themes of the story. The big thing was we did a huge research trip 5 years ago when we first pitched the movie. We spent like 3 weeks in Samoa, Fiji, Tahiti. We met with cultural ambassadors, linguists, anthropologists, sailors, and chiefs, and their connection to and the importance of respect for nature, respect for the environment, and also the interconnectedness and extended families and the idea of your heritage and your legacy. We heard this expression in Tahiti, know your mountain, and your mountain is essentially everything that led up to you. All the people that led up to you, everything that happened, all of the things that, if they didn't exist, you wouldn't exist. And they said if you don't know your mountain, you really don't know who you are. I mean, Yeah, the themes of respecting nature and knowing who you are incredibly important to this story as well as the culture. So much so that directors John and Ron actually changed the story pretty substantially after their trip to better incorporate some of the major lessons they learned while experiencing a bit of new culture. I think that's pretty cool. And although this movie isn't 100% accurate with how it adapts Polynesian culture, apparently in some ways it's pretty far from it, I do really appreciate the care and effort they put into making something that respects the messages of said culture. Also, I cannot praise the music of this film enough. Looking at Moana's solo song, How Far I'll Go, is just another great example of communicating information to the audience in a way that feels completely clear with its message while still feeling fun and impactful. This is her I Want song, which I believe to be a crucial element of most Disney musicals. This is where our protagonist proclaims all that they desire, laying out their dreams and wishes clearly for the audience. Moana wants to sail the sea. It calls to her. We've previously seen that, but now we truly know how hard it is for her to try and be, as she says, the perfect daughter, despite her longing for the ocean. This track starts out somber and slow, but it builds and becomes more triumphant the further Moana gets out on the ocean. This perfectly reflects how she feels. To put it plainly, she's sad on land, but out on the water, she's able to belt out that passion within her. I love it. Okay, that's all you get, sorry. And fun fact, the ocean calling out to her specifically makes perfect sense because the name Moana means ocean in many Polynesian languages. It's like she was destined to have a unique relationship with the sea. I guess her father didn't know what he was signing up for when he named her that. Though I do really enjoy the relationship she shares with her father. He is certainly not an antagonist to her, he just wants to keep her safe, and he stands as a unique obstacle that she has to overcome. Now, in early drafts of the story, Moana actually had older brothers who participated in boat races that Moana wasn't allowed to participate in, and she would have to prove herself more competent than them in order to be allowed to sail, and yeah, I'm glad all of that was cut. Her not having any siblings allows us to focus on the specific relationship she has with her father, who represents the life on the island that she's supposed to have, as well as the specific relationship with her grandmother, who represents Moana's free spirit and desire to be different and defy the societal rules set by her father. I like the idea that there may have been some gender roles that Moana may have had to overcome, but truthfully, I quite enjoy the version we got. Especially since Maui kinda sets a bunch of gender-based expectations for her anyway, so she can eventually prove him wrong.
You're a princess. You are not a wayfinder. You will never be a wayfinder.
Which I feel works way better than the brother plotline, because they would have been inconsequential to the story in the grand scheme. Yet her relationship with Maui is a major focus in the movie. However, there was a deleted scene early on that I wish they would have kept in, which would have established the ocean as a dangerous and unpredictable force, despite it being Moana's friend.
No! Stop!
This would have made it a little more clear to the audience how the ocean works, since sometimes it's able to supernaturally help Moana however she wants, and other times it's not as sentient and present as a living thing.
The ocean isn't your pet. It's not a toy, and it doesn't always want to play with you. You can't just give it orders.
Not a super big deal though, as I think this would have disrupted the flow of the opening scene, since the story naturally progresses from Moana becoming infatuated with the ocean, gaining the heart of Te Fiti, and then boom, we're jumping right into the where you are sequence that brings us through a time lapse. This movie really has no fat and all flows together really nicely. Though I feel there are other sequences that may have been nice additions, I really like that this movie respects my time and doesn't have a single wasted scene, nor a wasted character. You can say that Heff didn't need to come on the boat with Moana, but honestly, I think he actually adds a lot to the film outside of the occasional comedic gag. He's someone for Moana to share her inner monologue with when she's alone, which conveys information to the audience without her explicitly narrating it to us. And he also becomes a unique side objective for Moana to try and keep alive, especially after he swallows the heart of Te Fiti and the Kakamora kidnap him. But he's also really not that in your face at all, and all of his silliness is pretty subtle and cute. I also really like that they introduced Pua, this super cute, marketable pig, that actually wound up kind of underutilized, which I'm more than okay with. I'd rather have not enough than too much. And I'm sure Disney still sold plenty of plushies of him despite not constantly shoving him in our faces. Now, it's about a third of the way through the movie when we meet Maui. And I must say, I absolutely love this character and how he and Moana play off each other. I know that design-wise, Disney definitely took some creative liberties with how he looks and acts regarding how he compares to the actual Polynesian myth. I can't really weigh in there as I was previously unfamiliar with the myth before watching Moana, but I have heard many say that the myth version of Maui is not nearly as big physically. He's still portrayed as strong, but not quite as wide. And I've heard the myth version described as a lot more humble than this version. However, I do feel that this Maui works really well for this story. It's genuinely weird to see The Rock give such a strong vocal performance here when he's generally one of the worst, most bland actors I've ever seen, who somehow sets out to narcissistically take over every franchise he's ever been a part of. Generally, I can't stand this guy these days, unless I'm rewatching The Game Plan, that is. That movie is a masterpiece.
The hierarchy of power in
The Game Plan
is about to change. Pain!
But I do still really like him as Maui. Animated Maui, that is. And I love his introduction. You're Welcome is a song that establishes all of the good deeds Maui did in the past, which, once again, sets up the eventual reveal that he did all of this out of a desire to be loved by the humans that he did these things for. This sequence once again uses that Polynesian-inspired art style, combined with Maui's living tattoo artwork, to create a beautiful musical segment in perhaps one of the movie's most catchy sequences. Oh, and look, there's another quick and subtle setup for Tamatoa. I love it. And I also really appreciate that this movie is not a romance. Just because a male and female protagonist go on an adventure together doesn't mean they have to fall in love. I really like how these two bicker and fight just to come to an understanding, which winds up as a strong friendship between the two of them. Plus, it would be kind of weird if they got together anyway because Maui is an ancient demigod and Moana is 16. But some people just expect that two characters having strong chemistry should instantly mean romance, and I firmly disagree. Controversial take here, but I personally don't think Nick and Judy should get together. I'm saying it, okay? Okay, it's not necessary. They can just be a good buddy cop duo. That doesn't mean they have to bang, okay? But Moana and Maui are ironically very similar from the get-go. Maui completely rejects Moana as a companion. He fully believes he does not need her help, and doesn't at all believe in her being some sort of chosen one because she's just a kid. While Moana believes this journey to be far easier than it is, and doesn't realize how kind of in over her head she is. She doesn't even really know how to sail until Maui teaches her how to. Sure, she sought out his help, but she needs way more guidance from him than she thought when it comes to sailing.
It's called wayfinding, princess.
And he needs her heart, her brains, optimism, and most importantly, her support. Because what he desires more than anything is the quote-unquote love of humans which make him feel wanted. So Moana learning to sail with Maui, or them working together to defeat different monsters, all serves to strengthen their bond. These aren't pointless action sequences. They're crucial character building moments which are encased in really fun sequences which raise the stakes. Maui has little to no faith in Moana during the Kakamora sequence, but the more she proves herself, and the more vulnerable Maui allows himself to be, the closer they come to being a proper team. But neither of them will find true success on this adventure until they come to terms with who they are and learn what they are capable of physically and internally, both because of and despite where they may have come from. These two both faced their unique challenges growing up. They both lacked the parental support they desired in order to find success. But the thing is, nobody else can decide who you are for you. Both Moana and Maui still eventually discover themselves and succeed on their own and as a team through this shared adventure, which really brings the themes of knowing who you are together really nicely. Now, I must admit, I wasn't a huge fan of the Tamatoa stuff for quite a while. I know, Shafrillis is gonna eat me, but hear me out. I like this scene a lot more nowadays, but back when this came out, I just found it really odd that this character kinda pops up out of nowhere and then immediately gets his own musical sequence all about himself, just to then have no further relevance in the story after he's gone. However, I totally get it now. He's there to support the anti-theme of the film. He's a villain obsessed with his literal shell, who cares nothing about what's on the inside, which, is kind of the whole point of the movie. I'm sorry I ever doubted this big beautiful crab, okay? The specific Maui-centric part of the song is one of the most important moments of the whole movie, and it definitely gets bonus points for being told to us in song form. I love how as the song gets tonally darker, the already captivating visuals are made much darker as well to reflect this. It really feels like Tamatoa is shifting gears in order to tear Maui a new one. It's great. Tamatoa and Maui have a history, and Tamatoa outs Maui's biggest insecurities during Shiny. Maui was abandoned as a baby and has been desperately chasing the love of humans because they make him feel wanted. He may act all tough on the outside, but on the inside, he just wants to be loved and appreciated by others, which recontextualizes all of the wonderful things he did in the past, which he laid out during You're Welcome. Tamatoa is a very well-designed, perfectly voice-acted character who I do really appreciate. Though I almost wish he was just a little more relevant to the overall plot with maybe another appearance or two, especially because he's connected to Maui's backstory and serves as a solid reflection of Maui's self-worth problems. Tamatoa is very proud of himself. He loves how he is and how he looks, and he doesn't need anybody to prop him up. Maui does, which doesn't make him weak. As Tamatoa claims, his care for others and desire to do good is what makes him who he is. Hiding his vulnerable side under this tough, carefree exterior is what made him weak.
Moana's journey is finding out what that voice inside her says and who she really is. Tamatoa comes in and goes, doesn't matter. Who cares? It's about how you look. So who cares who you are on the inside? You gotta be shiny, homie.
All things considered, Tamatoa fits into this film really well and actually makes it feel a lot bigger, not only by literally being a giant sea monster, which makes you question what kinds of other monsters could be out there, but he also ties into Maui's past, which makes it feel like there's a lot of grand mythology out there in this world which existed prior to the character of Moana. I just wish he got to be a little more relevant. However, this character and his realm of monsters don't seem to be rooted in any sort of Polynesian mythology, like how Maui is. Disney definitely took some creative liberties when choosing what pieces of Polynesian mythology this story was actually based on. For me, this is not a good or bad thing necessarily, because this is an entirely original story which is simply inspired by Polynesian myths, so the creatures and characters aren't meant to be one-to-one adaptations. The Kakamora, however, are actually based on cryptids from the mythology of the Solomon Islands. But in the myth, they are just little hairy people. Now, in the movie, they aren't literally coconuts, they're just wearing coconut armor, so they're probably little hairy guys in there, which is similar to the myth, but nowhere in the legends do they actually wear coconuts. But they're still really well-designed creatures that make for a really entertaining action set piece. I mean, there is so much movement in this sequence, there's so much going on, it had to be an absolute nightmare to animate.
What are we doing? What's going on?
Yet I respect the hell out of the animators for accomplishing this. You don't even see many, if any at all, repeat designs amongst these guys. They all have their own unique coconut designs amongst them, all with different face paint, accessories, and even different coconut shapes and sizes. It's really cool. Oh, and look, there's even a Baymax Kakamora. That's pretty neat. Yeah, I really respect the animators for everything they accomplished with this movie. I mean, the work that went into animating the water alone, they had to create their own water simulation engine, which they called Splash, very fitting name, for testing the water and wave effects so they could perfect the look of the ocean, which was kinda crucial to them for this film. I feel we often take animation for granted considering how much work it takes to bring these worlds to life. Moana is full of unique water effects which had to each be carefully crafted by hardworking artists who were all collaborating to enact the vision of the writers/directors. Anytime Disney takes something like this and ports it into live action, it always loses the passion and creativity which were required to make something like this in the first place. because the remake inherently demands that there be no creative vision because it is designed to replicate someone else's. Yet that vision was intentionally built into the art form of animation. They go hand in hand.
Would be more fun than live action. So
The hierarchy of power in my balls is about to change.
I know, I said I didn't want to talk about this shit, but here I am. I just really love animation, and I find it frustrating when it doesn't get the respect it deserves as an art form. Because this is disrespectful. I mean, let's look at the ending battle with Taka. The way this thing's piercing red and orange body of lava pierced through the dark clouds set behind it, which billow from its own body. This thing is terrifying. It looks like a Dark Souls boss. Its design alone communicates how dangerous it is, and I love it. Yet its evil is made so clear by how it moves and the facial expressions it makes. This communicates exactly what it's feeling, and it is pure rage. This is a character that can truly only be brought to life through animation, and maybe video games, but that would also contain elements of animation anyway. Many of these characters, in how they look, how they move, it only works in the form of animation. Maui is not just meant to look like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
His design here was actually very carefully considered. Builds like this don't really exist in real life, and the way that he moves, well, he moves like a cartoon character. This movie was meant to be animated, and it's beautiful. When Moana splits the ocean to step out and return the heart of Te Fiti, it mirrors the beginning of the movie in the moment when she received the heart. It should only make sense that her returning the heart should poetically reflect that scene. Even the music in both scenes is very similar as well. It's quite beautiful. And Moana confidently approaching Taka as she's consumed by the smoke without flinching just emphasizes how far she's come on this journey. She has become the voyager that she set out to be. God, why is this movie so good? My only real complaint here is they do a kind of rushed third act low point prior to this where Maui leaves because he's scared of breaking his hook and losing his power, because he believes he's nothing without his power. It doesn't last long, and we all definitely know he's gonna wind up coming back at just the right moment to save the day. So this doesn't feel super necessary, but it gives Moana the opportunity to connect with the spirit of her grandmother as she comes to terms with who she is, which gives her the strength to carry on and finish her mission.
You literally have to keep your home in your mind so that you know where you're going, which to me is such a metaphor for what we aspire to do in real life, sort of never forget where we came from, and that will always sort of help guide our way.
And I suppose running off for 10 minutes is all Maui needed to come to terms with who he is, as he acknowledges that with or without his hook, he's still Maui. So all in all, I'll allow that kind of quick and obvious low point if it's in favor of strong character development. And when Maui returns, he gets to come save the day, and it's a really cool action sequence, and yeah, it's fine. Maui's whole arc is really emphasized in this moment, when he lays down his hook and stands up to face Taka in order to draw its attention from Moana. He no longer has his powers, his armor, as Tamatoa would call it, which he has been so reliant on this entire film. Yet here, he's just Maui, but he's still a hero. And at this point, he's fully accepted that. And apparently, this is an authentic ceremonial dance he's performing here, which is known as the haka. He is clearly presenting a challenge to Taka, which he performs with full confidence, despite knowing that he's probably gonna die. But he doesn't care because at this point, he has finally fully accepted himself for the hero that he has always been inside. And he buys Moana just enough time to realize who Taka really is inside. Even our fiery demon villain must be reminded of who she is, which is the final piece of closing out our most major theme of the film, knowing who you are. All in all, this is a great film with well-earned character arcs and a satisfying ending, as after returning home, Moana then leads her island to return to their roots as voyagers, which puts to rest the conflict between her and her father from the beginning of the movie. This is one of Disney's all-time great films, and while it did come out a whole decade ago, it's still far more recent than most of Disney's other great films. I really don't want to believe that they've fallen off, because films like Encanto and Zootopia 2 are genuinely great, but I feel nothing has been able to capture that classic Disney princess adventure magic quite like Moana did a whole 10 years ago. This one has honestly only gotten better with time for me personally, because the subpar Disney catalog surrounding it only reminds me how truly special this one actually was. It still holds up incredibly well, so I highly recommend that if you haven't recently, go rewatch it. Maybe instead of wasting our time with that remake, we can just go back to enjoying this one instead, because it's just that good. So if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching my video.